hope that before you watch this, you would have already watched Chris and Steve Crimmy and I talk about the antiquity and the interesting places in Turkey. We go back through history. This is where Troy and the Trojans, the fall of Troy and Ilium took place. The story of King Agamemnon in Mycenae. This is where it unfolded. This is the great Hittite Empire that fell to the Sea Peoples Federation. This is where this occurred in ancient Turkey. This is where the Frisian Empire had flourished. Later, they became the Lydians. They went to war with the Medians. You guys remember 583 BC in my Phoenix phenomenon presentations. 583 BC, the sun darkened, predicted by Thales of Miletus, and the Lydians and the Medes made peace when the sky went dark, and they erected a monument. It's in Turkey called Yasilikaya, two kings holding a black sun. This is a very ancient land. This is where the ruins are of Noah's Ark. This is where we have the seven churches of Christianity. They're all there. Well, most of the churches of Christianity were right there in Asia Minor. This is where Mytilene, Milesia. It's the central hub. Well, we're always told that it was the Near East, Babylon, Sumer, and all. It's not. Turkey was the central hub of empires in the ancient world for a very long period of time. Even before the Hittites, there was Hadi and Mitanni, and this is it's a very enigmatic area because there are layers of archaeology that are inexplicable, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video here. So before, you know what, I'm just going to go straight into it. I don't have anything to present other than images, and I'm going to tell you what you're looking at, because many of you have never seen these things, and it's going to give you some perspective about this place here, Gobekli Tepe and Catal Huyuk. And contrary to popular belief, I mean, a lot of people think there's a place called Gobekli Tepe and there's a place called Catalhoyuk, but I'm telling you now, there are many Huyuks and there are many Tepes, and I have maps that show multiple locations for all these places. It's not as simple as you think, and we're going to get to that. It's neither are these places as old as purported. I'm going to share screen, go straight into this presentation. Let's see. Oh yeah, I'm getting fast at this. All right. I know you guys can see that. Look at that. That's Gobekli Tepe. And it's just one Tepe site. There's a whole bunch of it. Now, what we're looking at, stripping everything down to its lowest common denominators, we're looking at a walled enclosure that is, for some reason, been buried. That's what we're looking at. It's been buried. That's why it wasn't known for thousands of years. It's just lying underground right here, buried. How many of them out there in the hills are buried? Unknown. Look, it's not even in a prominent position. Maybe the topography has changed since then. Very interesting. All these T-type pillars. We're going to get into that. Remember, this right here, you can't get a better example of walled enclosures. Remember that. We're gonna put the Tepe sites into the historical record. We've missed it, but all along we knew what they were. All right, that's what you're going to find out in this video. You're going to find out that all along in our historical studies, we've been knowing what these places were. We just misidentified them, did not even make the connection, because we were told that all the beginnings were in the Near East around Sumer and Babylon, and they weren't. Those civilizations developed only after the Great Flood. Here it is, guys. Walled enclosures everywhere you look, with pillars. This is Gobekli Tepe. Here's the controversial stone. Pay attention to the condors, the birds here. Look, the cranes, whatever they are. Listen, these are found in what are supposed to be Neolithic sites all over the world. Some anthropologists refer to this as the bird cult. It's very popular. There's been several. I think Andrew Collins wrote a book about them. Might not have been him. I don't remember. There's one at the top by the handbag. A little bitty bird right there. some type of quadruped. There's a frog. And then you got all these birds. Remember the bird cult right here. Look how these are in relief on the stone. This is very important, guys. It's very important. These are the things that you're not told by people like Graham Hancock. These are the things I'm pointing out, things that completely go against the popular notions put out by Graham Hancock and others about these sites. This is not Ice Age dating at all. Do you see these bags? We all know those bags are everywhere. They're everywhere. Handbags. It's crazy. This is Gobekli Tepe, the walled enclosure. Look at this pillar here. This is a pillar. Not really sure. It looks like an hourglass symbol. We don't really know what it is. It's just pretty interesting. Okay. Fingers of the bird cult. Do you see these hands with these fingers here? Where have you seen that before? Because this pillar is at Gobekli Tepe. And in the video that you were supposed to watch before looking at this with Chris and Steve Cremy, they're standing getting a photo taken. And in the background, you can see this very pillar with those fingers. I'm going somewhere with this, guys. This is Gobekli Tepe. Look at those hands and fingers. Look how that pillar, look how they wrap around right there. Very important. There's the same pillar. There's a belt and a loincloth right there. This is an effigy, a pillar representing a man. See the fingers. This is a statue of a man in the form of a pillar. Remember, in the Christian mysteries, he that overcometh, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Evidently, identifying people in holy sanctuaries as pillars is very ancient. This is a walled enclosure, guys. All right, look at this pillar here. We'll get back to the bird cult. There's another bird right here. And then you got a quadruped, looks like a reptile. Something here underneath this bull. Aurochs or a bull right here. I don't know what it is. That could be a fox and a bull. Okay, what we're looking at right here doesn't belong in this file. But I'm going to show it to you anyway. I'm going to show it to you anyway because this is the bird cult. These are the bird cult. Somebody put white chalk in them so you can see them better. But these are in relief, just like Gobekli Tepe. These are on the opposite side of the world. This is at Rapa Nui. This is Easter Island right here. Exact same birds, big old eyes. Exact same birds. Easter Island. I know it sounds like a coincidence. Here's bird cult at Easter Island. All right, we're going back to Gobekli Tepe. This is a picture of Gobekli Tepe. Gobekli Tepe. It's on my shirt. I can't say it. Here it is right here. Here appears to be a cat, tiger, lion, whatever. Another pillar, another T pillar. Here's another picture of Gobekli Tepe, walled enclosures right here. Here's another bird on the front. There's some other animals on the pillars. There's a scorpion right there. Let Graham Hancock say it. That's Scorpio, and because that pillar's facing this way, and we know because of the precession of the equinox that we were looking due certain degrees at that time. And you know what? That's proof that Atlantis was 9,600 BC right there. That scorpion right there. My God, I lose IQ points listening to that drivel. Look at the handbags. I have to show these. I have to show these, and so I'm going to hammer my points in here in a minute. This is Gobekli Tepe, bird cult. There's scorpion at the bottom, another bird at the bottom. Maybe wingless birds like your emus. Here are vapor canopy birds. Here are your handbags. Very relevant here. Handbag study is extremely relevant. Handbags again. This is a different vantage point of the same pillar. Right here. Right here. We have those handbags create a real problem, guys. We're going to get into it in a minute. The handbags create a real problem for dating Gobekli Tepe to 10,000 BC or 8,000 BC or anywhere in that area. Look at all these pillars, ring within ring, all these walled enclosures. All right. You see on the map there, let's go Gobekli Tepe right there. Can't miss it. Right there. But there's a lot of other ones. This one, there's Asik Huyuk right there. Gusir Huyuk. Catal Huyuk is not on this map, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. I got other maps to show you. Look at that. Look how artistic that pillar is. Look at that statue creature made out of the same stone about to pounce on this effigy creature underneath it. That's very, very artistic. Again, here's a different vantage point of a bird, a fox, and a bull. And again, birds on the bottom. There's your scorpion, your 3 or 4 birds. Handbags. A fox and something else. I don't know what that is. It's a different pillar. All right. Let me check these real quick. All that's out of there. Now, the handbags are a problem, guys. The handbags are a real problem. As you can see here, this is in Mesoamerica. This is on the opposite hemisphere from Gobekli Tepe. This is a deity or something holding a handbag. Now, this handbag has been found everywhere. This handbag is associated to the goddess between 2 lions effigy. Now, you see the 2 snakes in the air. Below them, though, are the 2 lions. We have 2 lions between a goddess, which was a very, very significant date. It's a date moniker. It literally tells you, just that effigy gives you a window of time that these handbags were in vogue. The goddess and the double lions and the goddess and the snake. It's all right here. This is the handbag. Handbags been found everywhere. This isn't me, guys. This is all over the internet. You can see these handbags. The one on the left is an Assyrian relief. It's an Assyrian relief showing a god with a handbag, a seraphim. Now, there's the one in Mesoamerica. Here again, Mesoamerica again is real popular. Mesopotamia, here's one from that's either I want to say Nimrod, but it could be Babylon or Kalna. Here's one from Mesopotamia. There's a god holding a bag. Remember, the Anunnaki were always depicted as bearded. They were just humans, guys. They were just humans. Here's the tree of life, pine cone. Here's holding a bag. Assyria had these trees of life like that. Same one right here. Different relief, but same concept. All right, here it is again. The goddess between 2 leopards. Or by this time, it could be the hero. But I think I'm not sure. Could be the hero, but it is long hair. I don't know. Either way, it's a deity between 2 leopards. Very important. Also in the form of a handbag. Here's more handbags. There's Dagon. There's Dagon right there with a handbag in the middle. At Teotihuacan, or no, at Tiwanaku in South America, here's a god in the form of a pillar holding a handbag. Right there on the far right. Handbags are a real problem for Gobekli Tepe, guys. Here's the handbags at Gobekli Tepe, right there above the bird cult. Right there. The reason they're a problem is a chronological one. And the chronological problem, as we're gonna go into this Easter Island right here, before we go into the Easter Island, let me stop sharing and explain to you guys. We have a problem because the handbags, the Sumerian Pentapolis that was wiped out by the Great Flood, existed for 600 years before that. And before that, we might have had some urban centers here and there, but there's just nothing in the archaeological record beyond the 35th century BC of any urban planning or anywhere sophisticated anywhere in the world. Nothing. We don't have anything. Only recently have the tepes been found in Catal Huyuk. And it's been basically claimed that these sophisticated urban centers go back to 8,000 BC and 10,000 BC. The problem is the uniformitarian dating system using carbon 14 extrapolations is what was used without taking into consideration anything about the isotopic breakdown of carbon in a vapor canopy mesosphere. They never considered that. No one was considering vapor canopy, and yet we have all these scientific reports about a vapor canopy used to exist. You guys have seen my channel, you've seen my presentation. How many scientists have released books about vapor canopy? So uh, we have a problem there. Further, carbon 14 dating is falling apart even in the scientific community. Don't take Jason's word for it. A simple Google search on unreliability of carbon 14 dating, and you will find that even scientists that have used carbon 14 dating are now saying that it's at best 50-50. What? How is it 50-50 in accuracy when you take hundreds of examples and then cherry pick the 10 or 30 that you need and then turn around and don't tell the public that the other 170 examples told you a different reading and you took the cluster readings and then grouped them together and gave us a date? Guys, you cannot date ancient structures by carbon 14. It is a William Lilly had no idea what kind of controversies he was going to create when he came up with this method. It is entirely arbitrary. It's all BS. The scientific world has pulled one over our eyes. Carbon 14 is a myth. There is no way to date anything by carbon 14 isotopic breakdown and measuring the breakdown of carbon isotopes in the atmosphere. It's total crap. And they're starting to admit it now. And what's crazy about it, it's that woke culture is the one that brought this whole controversy to the table because they're claiming that carbon emissions from our vehicles could be contaminating scientific output. It's ridiculous. But anyway, the articles are out there for anybody to go find. You need to understand that carbon 14 can't be used to date Gobekli Tepe or Catal Huyuk. I'm going to show you better methods to date it, such as the one I just told you. The goddess between two leopards, two lions. Yeah, that's definitely around 38. We're talking about 38th century BC, all the way to about 2239 BC, the 1656 years of the pre-flood world, the vapor canopy world. That's when the goddess was prevalent, during the vapor canopy. That's when the woman sitting on throned in between two lions became popular during that period. That's when everything here dates to that period. But we'll get to that. We have way more evidence than just a faulty dating system and a woman between two lions. These are just given by way of example. Let me show you some compelling evidence. Let's go to share screen again. On my way. Entire screen. All right, back in it. Back in it. All right. Let's go check out Easter Island. So here's a Moya at Easter Island. If you look at the bottom of the screen, bottom of the picture, close enough, what do you see? Just like Gobekli Tepe, there's that pillar. That's a pillar, guys. And that is 5 fingers on that hand and 5 fingers on that hand. You can barely see it, but they're there. They're there. Here is a man representing a pillar right here. All right, let's move to the next one. Look at the back of this statue. What do you see here? It's the bird cult of Gobekli Tepe. Here it is right here. Here's your birds. Here they are on the back of this statue. Here they are again. Here they are again. This is on the other side of the world. Why is this important? Why? Because if you listen to the scientists today and look up Easter Island, Rapa Nui, if you look it up today, they're going to tell you that local Polynesians and South Pacificers carved these out 1,000 years ago. That's exactly what they're going to tell you. This was all done 1,000 years ago. When they were found in modern times, they were up to their necks and chins. They were buried up to their necks and chins. Scientists say they've dated them using carbon-14. They're only 1,000 years old. Look at this statue. What do you see here? Looks like the fingers of the bird cult to me. It looks like the fingers of Gobekli Tepe on Easter Island. How'd that happen? Probably happened the same way those Anunnaki handbags ended up on Easter Island, because Gobekli Tepe dates to the Sumerian Anunnaki period, which is only 38th century BC all the way to 2239 BC. The pre-flood world, the world of the Anuna. Yeah. Not the Billy Carson Zechariah Sitchin version, but the true chronological version of Shar's being day count system, like Genesis says. The evening and the morning was the first day. Yeah. Just like the Oralind Dutch manuscript says that in the time before the flood, years were not counted. The Dutch Oralind manuscript says that. Book of Jasher says they counted days. And the Bible does too. It always says, it doesn't say in the years of Noah. It doesn't say in the years of Enoch. Never says that. It never says in the years of David. Oh yeah, do you remember back in the years of Solomon? No, it always says in the days of Abram, in the days of Laban. Yeah, in the days of Uriah the Hittite, in the days of Pharaoh such and such. Yeah, it's always days, guys. That's why we know these dates are nowhere. These sites are not old. Because they are buried is not evidence of antiquity. Look at this. Fingers right here on Easter Island. Not Gobekli Tepe, where we first saw them. They're on Easter Island right here. Same style. Oh, what is this? This is an artifact found where? Easter Island. What is it? It looks like a Gobekli Tepe bird cult artifact to me. Oh, Rapa Nui, Easter Island. We got more. That looks like a bird on the right. Well, I'm not going to call it. It's just really interesting how they got all this carved stuff on the back. The same style as Gobekli Tepe. Here it is right here. It's just a different vantage point. There's a bird at Easter Island on that boulder overlooking the sea. Oh, look at those fingers. Oh yeah, that guy right there looks proud, looking out at sea like that with his hands right there. That's a pillar, just like Gobekli Tepe. Those are fingers. Look at that. Can't miss those fingers. So why did I show this one? Oh, there's the fingers on the bottom on the left. He's wearing a belt right there on the right. That's right. Can't miss those fingers. Right there. There's the fingers. This is Rongo Rongo. The letters on Rongo Rongo look like fish, birds. There's a bird right there. Fish. There's definitely fish. Crabs, little animals, little effigies of people wearing hats. They're all in here, guys. The artwork looks just like Gobekli Tepe. Ain't no different. This is Easter Island. This is Rongo Rongo, same stuff. Rongo Rongo, same artistic styles. So we have the handbags that date to the 3rd millennium BC. The handbags. Now we have the bird cult, which is definitely 3rd millennium and 2nd millennium BC. But now we have the fingers and the bird cult that, according to archaeologists, are only 1,000 years old. They're only 1,000 years old, but they were found deep underground in Turkey. Many Huyuk and Tepe sites. How do we reconcile this? Did the people of Gobekli Tepe, did those people time travel to Easter Island of 1,000 years ago? Because that's the scientific dating for Easter Island, and these fingers on these statues and the bird cult boulders and all that, and these artifacts and Rongo Rongo all dates to 1,000 years ago, according to science. How do they know? Because they use carbon-14 to determine that. But Gobekli Tepe used carbon-14 to determine its age as well, and because it's deep underground, they're sticking to their guns. It's 8,000 BC to 10,000 BC. Something's not adding up right. It's not adding up. Those handbags are an anachronism. An anachronism is something that has been found that is out of time, chronological time. It does not belong there. Those handbags specifically date Gobekli Tepe. Read my shirt. Specifically date that to the 3rd millennium BC, to the Anuna period of ancient Sumer. That's when they're dated. Remember, Gobekli Tepe is a walled enclosure. It's very important to remember that because we do have walled enclosures in that style in the historical record. We just never put 2 and 2 together. So that's Easter Island, which is only 1,000 years old, which has all the same things as Gobekli Tepe does. So I don't know, very crazy. So let's go look at Catal Huyuk. This is also Turkey, real close to the Tepe sites. As a matter of fact, the Tepe sites and the Huyuk sites are very similar. They're not only are they similar, they overlap in certain areas. There's Tepe sites and Huyuk sites all next to each other. This is the famous Catal Huyuk, where they got these red pigment figures, red pigment man. A lot of artistic stuff. Catal Huyuk. Here's the vapor canopy goddess between 2 cats again. It dates it to the 3rd millennium BC. This is 38, the 38th century BC, all the way to the 22nd century BC, when the great flood of Noah happened. Here it is right here. This is the same, this is the exact same stuff we find elsewhere all throughout Turkey. Here's the bull cult. What did we see at Gobekli Tepe? We saw a bull. So if Graham Hancock can look at a scorpion and tell you that Scorpio, and that dates this to 12,000 BC, to the Younger Dryas point, and he can even go into these little minutiae, like they even matter, talking about, oh, we even got it down to meltwater pulse 1b. The dumbest stuff I ever heard in my life. But this is what he says in his presentations. Well, if that's the case, then Mr. Hancock needs to point out to this bull, to the bull at Gobekli Tepe, and say, oh, this right here's the bull cult. Right here. Here it is. Well, if that's the case, well, so is this. Catal Huyuk. Here's the bull cult. Here's a bull right here. Not only that, but at Catal Huyuk, they had bull's horns made of stone inside the houses. Here is an artist rendition of Catal Huyuk. Very, very, very sophisticated to have carpet matting on the floors. Very sophisticated to have really good working drainage and sanitation. It's pretty damn sophisticated. But what were they hiding from? Because they didn't want to touch the ground. Most people stayed inside the settlement. They could grow food from their roofs. The entire city is every single building is accessible to every other building by walking along the rooftops. There are no streets in Catal Huyuk. What were they scared of? It's very interesting. We're going to get to that in this video because it's some really compelling stuff what other researchers and scientists are saying about the environment that these people lived in. So here's some special items in art as well from the burials at Catal Huyuk. So we have leopards are prominent, leopard daggers, snake daggers. Their burials were interesting because at Catal Huyuk, they buried their dead underneath their floors in their own homes. Why would you bury your dead in your own house? Why would you dig up your floor to bury your family in the floor of your house? I'm going to tell you why. It has everything to do with the vapor canopy environment. But this is what they did. So, a lot of statues here. Look, this really looks like Easter Island. This statue here really looks like an Easter Islander. Opposite side of the world. I get it. I get it. Jason, you're reaching. I get it. That's Catal Huyuk. This is Catal Huyuk right here. This is Catal Huyuk. At Catal Huyuk, there's a lot of paintings and stuff of very large animals and giant birds. And they had a fascination of birds plucking the heads off of humans. Oh, yes. This is the bird cult. Now, there's been some people who made up all kinds of wild rumors. This is not a phoenix, guys. This is not a phoenix. This is a perennial fear of the time because Catal Huyuk was thriving during the vapor canopy period. They built their city this way because they were scared of foraging insects that grew to giant sizes and, and amphibians and reptiles. They couldn't bury their dead outside the city because the creatures would just dig it up and eat them. Carry-on creatures would just dig up their dead and eat them. That's the environment they lived in. I've told you guys many times about how the vapor canopy period was and how different that world was from today. Yeah, and birds, giant birds were like dragons. And yeah, people were scared. So, oh, look at that. Look at that. Looks like a deer, a buck. This is Catalhoyuk. It's a different vantage point from Catalhoyuk. Just a small part of it. Here's an artist rendition of what it looked like inside of Catalhoyuk. Pretty artistic. Here's a guy over here with his legs spread, holding between these two pillars, which forms a dolmen. And then you got all these bull's horns everywhere. Look at all these bull's horns. Bull's horns and giant birds eating people, plucking their heads off. That's the bird cult. Look at that. That looks very Mesoamerican. That's how the Maya counted time. Cross bars, bars, and dots and squares. There it is right. That's very interesting to find that on the opposite side of the world. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Venus. Catalhoyuk venerated the goddess. Imagine that. Just like we saw the goddess between two lions a minute ago, also at Catalhoyuk. Look at this. This is also a part of Catalhoyuk. What does it look like to you? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. It is a walled enclosure. And we're going to get to that in a minute. Walled enclosures. More Catalhoyuk. There's the bulls. Catalhoyuk was like the beginning of the bull cult. Real urban center here. There's Venus. There's your Venus statue. This is vapor canopy civilization, guys. Catalhoyuk East, right here. You can ignore that dating. That dating is not right. Those are carbon-14 dates, and they are way too early. The place is not that old. Here's some burials underneath the floors in Catalhoyuk. Here's more burials. Something very significant was found out about these burials. I'm about to tell you that in a minute. Here's more burials. Lots. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of skeletons have been exhumed, have been studied. Look at all this. It's awesome. Different heights. Look at the windows. Plenty of ventilation. You could get from roof to roof, ladders, all this. They had the walls painted. They had carpet matting on the floors. Their animals lived among them inside the facility. What does this tell you? This tells you they couldn't allow their animals to go outside the city because predators would eat them. It was a vapor canopy world. Look at this, man. It's crazy. This is Catalhoyuk. Catalhoyuk has a lot of similarities and crossover with Gobekli Tepe and Easter Island. But Easter Island is only 1,000 years old. So there's a lot of crossover here, especially with the goddess motif, the bull cult, the bird cult, the handbags. Every bit of this is 3rd millennium BC. Every bit of it is 3rd millennium BC. So there's another city that dates to this period as well. It's Jericho in Israel. And what's fascinating is I'm gonna get here real quick. What's fascinating about Catalhoyuk is what the anthropologists have found. Many of the heads were removed from the skeletons after death that were interred. Many skeletons were found embracing a head for which a skeleton was missing. So they even found skeletons without a head. Lots of theories. No one really knows what's going on, but they would take the heads and they would take the skulls of their ancestors who were buried underneath their own living rooms and bedrooms, and they would plaster them. Don't know why. No one really knows why. But this is at Catalhoyuk and other places, all the Huyuk sites all throughout Turkey. Many of these sites right next to Tepe sites, like Gobekli Tepe. But where else this was found also was Jericho in Israel. And I'm going to show that to you now because it's going to help us date all this. It's just another data point. So let's look at it. Share screen, entire screen. All right, let's go look at this. Let's go look at this, my friends. Here's a plastered skull from Jericho. This poor bastard was alive at one time. And they plastered his skull and buried it. They plastered this guy's skull, or maybe a chick, and then buried her. They were putting plaster on the dead. This is Jericho. Jericho's ancient. Jericho has 17 or 18 levels of occupation. And the official archaeology of Jericho says that its most massive destruction was around 1600 BC. Ogaigian deluge, anybody? Yeah. I named Jericho in the 1687 BC Phoenix disaster. It was completely obliterated, just like Argos and just like Joppa, which are nearby. This is Jericho. There's another plaster skull. There's a real skull with plaster on it. Here's a real skull with plaster, and they put these seashells in there to make them look like eyes. Jericho. The cult of the skull seems to be attached to the cult of the bull, the cult of the handbag, and the bird cult. All the same people. Here's another one. Jericho, giant boulders and walls, and Jericho's it's totally destroyed. Here is an artist rendition of what the archaeologists are claiming Jericho had once looked like in its heyday. This would have been like the Roman period. I believe this is the head of a goddess. I've seen a figurine with her whole body. Let me show you real quick. I believe I have a figurine of her whole, an image of her whole body. This is Jericho. More Jericho. Not a lot to look at, guys. I'm sorry. Here's a collection of skulls that were found under Jericho. Here's Jericho. It goes down pretty far, guys. There's Jericho. Another plaster skull. That's it right there for Jericho. So this culture went from Israel all the way to Turkey. It's the same culture. There's no differences. So that's very compelling to find these skulls like that. But let's look what a scientist has to say about these, because there was not a scientist, but a lady was putting her thesis together for a PhD, and she provided a lot of material in a presentation, and I screenshot a bunch of the things that she was showing. Let's start with we're gonna do that one last. But all right, this is a nearby site called Natufian. Again, a plaster and ornament. They put some type of ornaments on a skull. Same culture. She's talking about Jericho, Catal Huyuk, and some other Huyuk. She's gonna name it. This is for Horish and Jericho. More plaster skulls. This is Ain Ghazal. It's another supposedly Neolithic site. A bunch of skulls. Okay, here's little figurines of people. Ain Ghazal, 1983 and 1985. Statues and busts. Here's Catal Huyuk. This is Catal Huyuk in Turkey. Another skull. Now check this out. Here's Jericho, Ain Ghazal, Nahal Himar, Tel Ramad. This is Besamoun and Kafar Horshish, all in Levant. All these down here, the same thing has been found. All these cultures here are dated at the same period, and they all plastered their skulls, just like up here at Catalhoyuk, which is, you remember all the Huyuks up here? Here's a Asaklai Huyuk, Kosh Huyuk, Catal Huyuk. These are all right next to the tepe sites. Here they are. They're all buried. They're all buried just like the tepe sites. No difference whatsoever. It's the same culture, guys. It's the exact same culture. All these had plastic. Look how close they were. The Levant and Anatolia are just as close to each other as the Levant and Babylon, or Anatolia and Babylon. They form a triangle. It's crazy. But Babylon, Assyria, Elam, Mitanni, all these areas around the Tigris Euphrates, they were developed after the flood. At this time, there was nothing there. There's nothing there. This is all vapor canopy. Anatolia and Levant, this is all vapor canopy communities and settlements. More skeletons found without their heads. Some found with another head. Oh, just more burials and how they were interred. I can't read, but that's fine. So this is what she asked at the end of her dissertation to get her on her thesis. This is a professional. She gave this presentation before a lot of people, and she calls it her thesis. At the end, she says why in all of the cases they were deposited in the house. She lays all this data out about they plastered the skulls, they buried the dead. Then they had all these communities where they were tightly knit, and yet they buried the dead directly under where they lived. So she's asking the question, and it doesn't make any sense. Now, it does make sense. It does make sense. In a vapor canopy environment, wildlife is everywhere, and insects are huge. Food is everywhere. You can't put the dead. You can't even dig 6 feet down, and something's gonna dig it up quick and start chewing on your loved one. No, and that's not cool. It does make sense. The world was a very different place during the vapor canopy, and it explains the anomalies with carbon-14 not working. It also explains why they buried their dead in their own dwellings. It explains all that perfectly. There's no there's no mystery here. This map here shows all the look at these tepes. Man, there's a bunch of them. And Huyuks. All these sites. Gobekli Tepe is not unique, guys. It's just being used to push a narrative. It's not unique. Look at all these sites. They all have their own mysteries. They were plastering the skulls. They worshiped the goddess between the the leopards. They had walled enclosures and pillars. This site is ancient. The ruins of the Americas are not as old as this. Sumer, Babylon, Elam, Mitanni, India, Africa, Egypt. Nothing is as old as this right here. These are all developed urban centers, but they're deep underground. They match the ones in Israel, which are deep underground. And they also had the bird cult, and they also had the worship of the goddess, and they also did. But this was a different period. It was vapor canopy period. But this is what was going on. These walled enclosures, guys, are not. It's not what they are. It's I mean, what they're presented as is not what they are. Let me find notes. So we have to go back to the beginning. In Genesis, we are confronted with, in the beginning, the first men. Remember, Genesis is a reset story. It's a reset story. In the beginning, humans were innocent. They didn't know the history of what had already happened, which was there was a technologically advanced society that had completely collapsed, which is our society right now in the future. But after its collapse, the new Adam and Eve's way back here are not going to know all this, and they're not going to know what happened. Well, the gods were just humans that were technologically advanced that were in the underworld. When they came up, they established these places in the Sumerian records called E.DINs. These E.DINs were paradises to humans. Everything was there. Trees had all the fruits there. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to work. You didn't have to wear clothes. You didn't have to do anything. They're like paradise resorts. Humans were naked, except for the technologically advanced ones that came from the underworld and built these facilities. These facilities were designed to be accessible to the underworld because there was traffic between the underworlders and the surface. But they didn't want to live on the surface. Their homes were in the underworld. They wanted to come up here. But then when they came up here, they wanted to be protected. So they had walled enclosures built at different places. And in the Sumerian records, the gods planted E.DINs in different areas. Those E.DINs were paradises. Paradise means walled enclosure. There's no mystery here. Turkey is where everything began after the last systemic reset. It's where the E.DINs were built. It's where they were put. Why were they buried? That's really easy for anybody who's seen my Phoenix phenomenon videos. I'm about to show you a chart to show you how easy it was. But from the beginning, from the beginning, these were holy sanctuaries. That I agree with Graham Hancock. These were holy places. But that's exactly where the Christian mysteries got that terminology from. I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. These were holy sanctuaries like temples, and that's how they were treated. The statue of a man in the form of a pillar is a religious prophetic symbol. And it's found in the book of Revelation, the book of the end. So these walled enclosures, this is what they became. This is what they began. I mean, even the word garden to the decoder. Now, I'm not into decoding. You guys already know I don't really play all those word plays and all that, but I do know this. If I was, I would count it as a data point that the word garden to a decoder would actually be a den that is guarded. You follow me? That's how the decoders do it on YouTube. I mean, I can't count that as a data point, but it is interesting. We live in a hologram, and truth can be manifested in multiple different ways. Like I tell you all the time, if something is true, you can see it from multiple different vantage points. In this scenario here about Gobekli Tepe, we can see it from the book of Genesis. It's a walled enclosure. It was holy. It was a holy place. We see it right here. These are the E.DINs of the ancient world. This is where the stories of the ancient world unfolded in Turkey. And it makes you wonder, okay, well, maybe that's why the 7 churches of Christianity in the book of Revelation are all right there. Sardis, Ephesus, I can't even name them all, right there in Asia Minor. I think 5 of the 7 churches are right there in Turkey. That's amazing. Some of the greatest stories from the ancient world, the whole Iliad and Odyssey, Turkey. The Hittite Empire, the Phrygians, the Lydians, Mithridates of Pontus, even Armenian histories of Tigranes IV and all that, all happened right there in Turkey, in that area. The Black Sea Wars, the Sea People's Federation, so many things that are in the historical record happened right there in Turkey. The Medo-Lydian War, King Croesus, the richest king in the world, gets subdued. All happened right there in Turkey. The Gordian Knot, Alexander the Great, all happened in Turkey. It makes you wonder. So that leads to the last part of my presentation. If the beginning was in Turkey, before the great cataclysm known as the Great Flood, then we have Gobekli Tepe and all the tepes, Catal Huyuk and all the Huyuks. We have Jericho and all the other sites of the Levant. All of those date to vapor canopy periods. All of those date the goddess, the bull cult, and the goddess cult, the bird cult, the handbags, the plastering of the skulls, interring the dead beneath their homes. Every bit of that is vapor canopy. It belongs in that period from 3895 BC to 2239 BC, the 1656 years of the antediluvian world. We can date all those right there. There's no mystery. Carbon-14 doesn't date them. That's all arbitrary. Carbon-14 couldn't date them because the mesosphere was very different with a different carbon content during the vapor canopy. So remember, carbon-14 is measuring carbon isotopic breakdown in the atmosphere. So I need to point out that if the biblical stories, remember Noah's Ark, on Mount Ararat. Where is that? In Turkey. All these biblical stories. If Turkey is where everything was going on, and it's the reason why we have all these layers of civilizations, and it's continuously occupied since the dawn of man, and if everything happened there, then it makes sense. We have a tradition from Turkey, from Phrygia. And in that tradition, it says in ancient times, King Anakos knew that the world was going to be destroyed. So he had his people build underground cities. And he took his people underground. And because of that, they survived the cataclysm. Phrygia is Turkey. Is there any evidence of a King Anakos who took his people underground? We have two data points. One, Anakos is nothing but a Phrygian Anunnaki or Inuki. It's no different than the Anuna. And it's the right time period, pre-cataclysm. What's the second data point? I'm going to show it to you right now. You need to see this. The second data point, I'm only going to show you one, but there's 59 more. This is Derinkuyu. This is an underground city in Turkey, and it's a real poor, blurry example. I'll show you better ones here in a second. This is Derinkuyu. My two guests, Chris and Steve Cremy, have been here. Not just Turkey, but they walked the halls of the underground city of Derinkuyu themselves. Yeah, guys, this is real. There's a lot on the internet about Derinkuyu, but they don't talk about the other 59 facilities they found all underground. This is an underground facility. It's a city. They say it held anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 people. It's in Turkey. Look at the size of that. Look at the size of that they concreted it. You see that donut? They concreted it so it wouldn't roll. But at one time, the average person could just roll it. And it would set in place, and then anybody coming through this hallway would never be able to move it because it rolled in channels, and there's just no way to move that weight out of the way. But the people on the inside could move it out the way because they would just push it out of the channel. Pretty smart. Look at Derinkuyu, underground cities. Listen, they had service shafts, guys. These are wells. This is an artist depiction. But these could have been technological as well. It may not have been with a bucket and a rope system like this. These shafts could have been elevators. It could have been technological. We don't know. We could have been a technology we just don't know. Because when these were built during the vapor canopy. Look at this. They're amazing. There's 60 of these sites underneath Turkey. Here's the top of one. Goes deep underground. Look at these. Imagine in ancient times being in here. The whole world's being destroyed on the surface, and you're down here kicking it with your buddies and your wives and girlfriends. There's another one of those wheels. Those are just doors for protection. This is Derinkuyu, guys. All this is Derinkuyu. It's amazing. Oh, here's a clear one here. It's amazing. 60 underground cities in Turkey. This is where the population went to survive the flood. This is where they went, guys. They went underground. How did they know to go underground to survive? Because 2239 BC, the Phoenix phenomenon, they knew. Remember the stories in Zechariah Sitchin revealed to us from the Mesopotamian tablets? He's right about that. Enki warned humans that a disaster was coming. In the Atrahasis epic, the gods are mad that humans found out that they're about to get flooded out. Enki became the trickster god. The other gods couldn't stand him because they couldn't trust him. But to humans, the trickster god became a benefactor and a patron. This is the story of Loki. The other gods consider him a trickster, but when it really comes down to it, Loki's a good guy. So is Enki. Derinkuyu, guys. Derinkuyu. It's amazing. Just amazing. These shafts are incredible. I wonder if elevators were used. It's amazing the technology they had to even carve all this out of solid rock. What did they do with the rock? Remember, there's a Mayan frieze that shows two bearded guys with backpacks using some type of gun that's spraying rock. Well, if that's true, according to David Hatcher Childress, it is. It's a Mayan frieze. Then, if that's true, then maybe they had some type of apparatus that liquefied rock and some type of pump system where they can send it somewhere else and use it somewhere else. It's amazing. It's all underground, guys. The reason I'm focusing on this is because we have an unbroken history in Turkey, and yet the most enigmatic sites do not fit anything in Turkey's chronology, in its historical record. We have to go to the biblical, Sumerian, and Near Eastern record, and yet all the stories. Listen, this is another data point you need to consider. The stories in the Sumerian traditions and tablets always concern mountains and mountain gods and great forests and ice caps and all that. None of that's in Babylon. None of that is in Assyria, and none of that is in Sumer. Nothing. There is not a single mountain in Sumer. There are no metals. There's no ores, and yet Bad Tabira was a metal was a refinery type city in the Sumerian text. It's because the Sumerian stories are stories ex post facto, long after the events they depict, recorded from oral traditions. The actual histories and stories didn't happen in the Near East, they happened in Turkey. That's my presentation, guys. That's my presentation right here. Gobekli Tepe. Oh, I got these charts to show you. Here's the historical record, 35th century BC, right there in the middle. Explosion of population. This is scientists and anthropologists agree to this. Explosion of population, agriculture, urban development, cereals, domestication of animals. All this happened in the 35th century BC, almost overnight. The Ubaid culture, which is the same culture as Jericho, same culture as Catal Huyuk, Gobekli Tepe. It's all pre-pottery Neolithic. This is their vernacular. Just like Easter Island is pre-pottery Neolithic, except it's only 1,000 years old. Now, Ubaid, Sumer, Harappa, Egypt, the Urubamba in South America, the Maya, the Olmec, Babylon, Jericho, Malta, Stonehenge, Newgrange, everything listed here came after this little period of the 35th century BC. Everything here, all this, the entire historical record, every single written document that we have, every tablet record, everything is 35th century BC and after. Nothing is before. Now, 380 years before the 35th century BC, we have the Adam and Eve reset. That's about right here. It's about right here. The Adam and Eve reset. 5200, well, we have the Nemesis Cataclysm. We'll get there. So here's the dating of Catalhoyuk. It's not true, though. As you can see, it's vapor canopy period. It's over here. Atlantis and Gobekli Tepe of Hancock and the Younger Dryas, all of this can come back. All this can fall all the way back. It is way too far. Nemesis Cataclysm is 5239 BC. Phoenix Cataclysm of 4309 BC, when Phoenix first appeared in the Nag Hammadi account. Here's the capture flood in 4039 BC, but here's when the E.DINs come into play. 3895 BC, year one of the vapor canopy world. Right here, 3895 BC, Phoenix, Genesis, pole shift, Adam and Eve reset, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. Two trees are in Eden. A tree is nothing but a pillar. It's a symbol for the pillar. So one tree is holy, one tree is both holy and unholy. These trees were put in a walled enclosure. It is later in the Bible called the Garden of Eden. But Eden is a word stolen by the Jewish scribes from Sumerian text. The Sumerian text describes them as E.DINs, and the E.DINs were fortresses that were walled enclosures. This is how the underworlders gained access to the surface. And when they got to the surface, they were still protected in a walled enclosure that had garden-like garden paradise for everything that they needed. And humans were banished. They weren't allowed inside the walls. This is what made them protected. In Genesis, it even says that a cherub was placed outside the garden to prevent mankind from coming back in. A cherub is a guardian. Garden, remember, is den that is guarded. That's the decoder way. So, this is we have so many different times. Look at this. The Nemesis X object, the Gihon flood, the Anuna appear with Enki, 3439 BC. That's when Gobekli Tepe and Catalhoyuk could have got buried. If not, pick another one. Here's one right here. 2239 BC. Total civilization reset. Everybody knows about the Great Flood. I did 5 videos on the Ogygian deluge right here. 1687 BC, the Ogygian deluge. This is also the date that archaeologists say Jericho was destroyed. After 17 or 18 levels of occupation, Ogygian flood, Joppa, its neighbors Joppa and Argos were also destroyed. So this is it, guys. These places could have been buried multiple times. But the very fact that Gobekli Tepe is just as deep as Catalhoyuk should tell you that they were buried at the same time. They're in the same location. And nobody's talking about that. Why isn't anybody talking about the fact that all the Huyuk sites are right next to all the Tepe sites? Why are you differentiating between the two when they're in the same depth, in the same geographical location? Therefore, archaeologists had to come up with a really dumb explanation. You know what it is? I'm gonna close my video out with this because and Graham Hancock's parroting this, but they're actually claiming that all of this is evidence that the people who built Gobekli Tepe deliberately buried the site when they left. Do you have any idea the manpower that they'll require that? But what they're not telling you is there's over 40 other Tepe sites. Did they bury those too? It's the Phoenix phenomenon, guys. And now that's my presentation. You've seen it? You've seen these charts? Here's where everything happened. So you can't put Gobekli Tepe way out here or Catalhoyuk. It all happened right here. All these cataclysms. This is a chart that shows cataclysms. Many of these cataclysms buried whole land masses in red dust, red mud, and red dirt. Some of them just caused liquefaction, mud bubbling up from subsurface. Some of them were diluvian, some of them were tectonic, and some of these cataclysms were volcanic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. Easter Island and the fingers of the bird cult prove Gobekli Tepe isn't old at all.